The reason they like reading my stuff is that I've always got real life examples to prove what I'm saying.
There's a lot of good people that listen to this podcast.
Other than God and my family, deer hunting would be next in line on my list of priorities.
From the bottom of our hearts, it's just fantastic and awesome to have the support that you guys are getting.
People ask me about expandable broadheads and love swings.
Chasing Giants with Don Higgins and Terry Peer. Brought to you by Osseo Camo, nature's most lethal camouflage. Follow along as Don and Terry discuss the techniques, strategies, and dedication needed to harvest one of God's most amazing creations, world-class whitetails.
Well, welcome everyone to the Chasing Giants podcast with Don Higgins. I'm Terry Peer. We're brought to you by Osseo Gear. Don, we have a pretty jam-packed show today, and I'm looking forward to this because I was a bit facetious this last week, and I made a bunch of posts about the price of batteries, and we're going to pick your brain about how to deal with this, and I think your answer is going to be surprising for a lot of people. But before we do that, we're going to catch up on a little bit of stuff. First off, happy 4th of July weekend, and we're sorry we're coming at everybody so late in the weekend. Usually we would have already uploaded this morning, but due to your travel schedule, my travel schedule, and some pretty bad storms, we were a little bit late getting to the game, so apologize for the delay. But let's talk a little bit about this rain. You called it. The drought is over at your house.
Yeah, it is. Wednesday, we was just dry as could be, and I went to Ohio Thursday morning and was there Thursday and Friday. Came home Friday night. When I left Thursday, it rained early Thursday morning before I left, but it had stopped. We had about 7/10 in the rain gauge, and we got a big storm Thursday afternoon. My wife said that the rain came sideways, blew stuff around, a lot of blowed down trees. We didn't get the worst of it though. Just to the north of us, up by Arthur, Mike Mitchell, that we talked about his micros, spraying those on the fruit trees and such. It came through his orchard and just wiped out a bunch of their trees. And then the rumor has it that there's a local factory, Cabot is the name of it, up by Tuscola, Illinois, where they clocked winds at 106 miles an hour. They said it was a derecho, and we were south of that a ways. But anyway, when I got home, Saturday morning, got up and went down and checked the rain gauge, and we had 2 and 8/10 is what we had. We got another 2 inches Friday night. Well, then it's actually raining at my house right now. So long-winded way of saying we've got a minimum of 5 inches of rain, depending on how much of it came sideways. But we had 5 inches in the rain gauge over about 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And then here we are on Sunday, and we're getting a little shower now. It doesn't look like it's going to amount to a whole lot, but maybe 2 or 3 more tenths. The first rains, they all just they soaked right in. They didn't run off. The creek didn't come up, nothing. And then last night we went to Indiana and had supper with our daughters for my son-in-law's birthday. And while we were gone, we got home right about dark. And while we were gone, we got another 1.2 inches. And that one, some of that was starting to run off of the fields down the waterways and such, but not bad, and not like you would expect 5 inches of rain. But anyway, the drought is over. And the craziest thing about it is I was looking at my plots Wednesday right before I left, dry as could be. And then I didn't get to see them for a couple of days as I was in Ohio. On Saturday, midday, I went out and looked at them again. And the difference between Wednesday and Saturday, about 72 hours, was absolutely unbelievable. When I left on Wednesday, my soybeans, they were drilled on the 7.5-inch rows with a Genesis drill. You could see the rows. You could look right down the rows. You could see dirt between the rows. And on Saturday, those rows had totally canopied over. It just looks like a green carpet of soybeans now. You can't see dirt whatsoever. and that happened in 72 hours. My corn shot up. My NutriCrave corn is head high now. The farmers' fields, most of the corn around my area, I would say at least 2/3 of it is starting to tassel. The tassels are just coming out. So this rain was, I mean, a lifesaver for the farmers. It could not have hit at a better time because the pollination was just starting, and that corn's got a root system on it now. And then you throw 5 inches of rain on it, and it's getting a good drink right here at pollination. It was they talk about $1 million rain. This was it.
Well, I want to first say that I know that there's still other areas that comment on both of our social medias about how they're still dry. I know out in Kansas is still dry, up in the Dakotas and Montana, Minnesota. They're all still really dry. So although we're very relieved around here, we know that there's still a lot of people hurting. And then with that storm that came through, there's also a lot of farmers that had their corn crop just laid flat over. And
Right.
that's going to be pretty devastating for those folks.
Yeah, right. I feel extremely blessed with what we got. We had a little bit of wind. My corn test plot, it was leaning over, but amazingly, it stood back up in 24 hours. It's got a big curve to the stalk now, but it is growing straight back up again. And I seen some pictures of some of those cornfields just absolutely devastated. And I'm sure those guys have crop insurance and that, but the guys that are still in the drought are the ones I feel bad for, because there's just nothing you can do. I mean,
right.
When it gets that dry, you're at Mother Nature's mercy.
Yep. Yeah, hopefully the people that got their corn laid over, it'll stand back up, or they'll be able to use a reel on their corn head or something that, can salvage some of it. But yeah, as we're both blessed, I know there's still a lot of people hurting. But so you went to Ohio to kind of work on your property and a consultant's property. Talk a little bit about that, because I think you were cut short on what you wanted to do on those properties because of the weather in Ohio being a little wet. I know you didn't get a 360 blind together because it was too wet.
Right. They'd been getting pretty steady rains for about 3 weeks there. And man, that property's looking good. I'm telling you, we was going to auction it off here in August, had plans. We already had the auction lined up and everything. And then there was a timber company that has a reserve through next year when they can come in and harvest some timber. And they contacted us out of the blue one day this week, said they wanted to come in and harvest timber. So, before we cleared plots and planted plots this spring, we was in contact with them, said, hey, if you're going to get this timber out, because it's coming to the end of their contract, you need to be doing it, because when we plant these plots, you're not coming through them plots. You're going to have to find another way to get your timber. And it's only a small portion. It's 174 acres, and there's probably maybe 40 of that, or I don't even know if it's a quarter of the property that, and the timber really does need cut. It's mature pine trees that it would do good if it got cut. So I don't know what their plans are now, but we just don't feel that we can sell it with that kind of hanging over the property. We're going to let that get taken care of and then sell it. But the plots that are there, I'm telling you, one plot, Wes and I went in to mark where we want a blind put, and there must have been 8 or 10 deer feeding in that plot, soybean plot of about 8 acres or so. I put a camera up on a 6-acre clover plot, and that camera's been going nuts. That clover looks fantastic. We put a feeder up, put some maximizer mineral out, and before we could get the blinds, and we did that the afternoon when we got there with the idea we'd put the blinds up the next morning. Well, the next morning it was raining, and it was just, we could have got in and got it done, but we was going to tear up the lanes and stuff to get there, and we didn't want to do that. So we got our friend Rich Hickson's going to put those blinds up. We marked exactly where they're going to go, and I talked to him about how I want them to face and all that. So that's going to happen. But so I made it home a little bit early, got to go to a good friend of mine's 60th birthday party Friday night, and it all worked out for the best.
Well, it worked out for me too, because as you're driving, Wes met you in Indianapolis and rode out there with you. And as you're all driving back and getting almost to, I guess, between Dayton and Indianapolis, I called you on the phone. I was on the way to Indianapolis for my daughter's softball game on Friday. I took a vacation day and was planning on, after her game Friday morning, heading over to Illinois to hang cameras. And Wes ended up saying he'd ride over there with me. And we haven't gotten a chance to really visit in a long time, actually, since the baby was born. So I met you off the interstate, really close to where my daughter's game was, and he jumped in the truck with me, and he went and helped me hang. I think we got 13 or 14 cameras hung
Awesome.
across quite a few pieces of property. So it was good for me to be able to get to spend some time with our friend Wes. So it worked out for both of us, I think.
Yeah, it did. You know, I enjoyed my time with Wes. He's a guy that just flat out gets it. His heart's in the right spot. And I wish I wouldn't have been driving and I could have taken some notes, because he had some quotes that I wish I could remember. That, I mean, I'd be posting them on social media, just little one-liners that made so much sense. And just, yeah, his heart's in the right spot. His priorities are in order. And it's always a pleasure to be around him.
Well, I bet he wishes he was driving too, because he said you cut off a car full of young girls and got flipped off by him. So he probably wishes he was the one driving too.
Yeah, it seems like every time him and I travel somewhere, somebody has road rage and flips out on us, and we don't even know what we're doing. We're just driving along like a couple old white guys, and this car of young girls flew around us and get in front of us and lock up their brakes, and they're flipping us off with both hands.
He said that he said that you used the famous Don Higgins words, "Unbelievable."
It was unbelievable. Yeah, it was funny.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about trail cameras here in just a little bit, but yeah, there's a quick update. We're gonna especially kick off this segment after the Osseo about, this is the exciting time for both of us. And 4th of July weekend, I got all these cameras put out up there in Illinois. Still have to do my home farm here in Kentucky, but I want to circle back a little bit before we move on about the weather, and that's just to calm everybody down about how dry it's been, and this shot of rain, if you got it, might have been just what the doctor ordered. Because the thing that gave me more confidence in driving out to Illinois is I still saw a bunch of soybean fields out in Indiana and Illinois where the beans are just ankle high. Mm-hmm. I saw wheat being harvested that's going to be double cropped into beans. They were literally harvesting the wheat so for all the food plotters out there that are maybe feeling like they're a little bit behind schedule and they got little bitty short bean plants because of the drought, if they get those weeds under control and keep them sprayed, this rain might be just what we need to make them explode the rest of the way through the summer. I'm actually encouraged just because of how much soybeans I saw that are shorter than anything in my food plots, and I've been worried about them.
Yeah, and I've shared the story before about how in 2012, when we had the really bad drought, and I went to Alaska that September, and then when I left, my soybean plants were just, shorter than knee high, and that's terrible for September. I'd gone 16 days. While I was gone, a hurricane came through and pushed a bunch of rain up our way. When I came back, them soybean plants literally tripled in size. And when the drought's going on and those plants, they're stressed, no doubt about it, but they're putting on roots. They're putting on a great root system looking for water. And then when you do get the water, then they've got the ability to take that water up and grow like crazy. I read I think I shared this on the podcast earlier this spring, but I read where the ideal situation for corn is that you plant it in fairly dry conditions. And then it's dry at the beginning of the growth cycle, and that corn puts on a fantastic root system that way. Where if it's wet early, it doesn't have to. It puts on a weak root system because that weak root system can still give the plant all the moisture it needs. So starting out dry, I just hope these guys that are still suffering from the drought can get a good rain, because their plants are going to be in a position to really take advantage of the moisture when they get it.
Yeah, there's just so many guys that we're hearing from that it's all doom and gloom, that they're already planning on what they're going to plant for their fall plots. And a lot of it might be over browse, and it might have gotten, too much browse pressure to where it's not going to recover. But again, we talked about this the last couple weeks. Don't go into panic mode just yet. We still have another month. You can make that call at the end of July on what you're going to do here the end of August and early September. So hopefully this rain is just what the doctor ordered. I'll be over at my place tomorrow. I had a really good kill down on my herbicide application. Really happy with that. There's hardly any weeds in my NutriCrave corn from the residual. So pretty stoked about all that. But we're going to take a quick break and talk about or switch over to Osseo. I want to make sure everybody understands that you have 2 days left on a big 4th of July sale. I'm putting the logo or the image of that sale up on the screen as we talk right now. But you got just a couple days to order that and save a lot of money. And especially you early season hunters, make sure you give a look to Osseo's early season gear. I know Joe just got done filming some segments for that product, and you won't be disappointed.
Osseo Gear introduces a premium line of bow hunting gear that is unmatched, pairing nature's finest camouflage with the best technological innovations. Osseo Gear brings whitetail bow hunters the gear they need to be the best at their craft. The unique camouflage mimics the intricate feather pattern of North America's greatest predatory creatures. Designed for invisibility, built for comfort, and engineered for function. Visit OsseoGear.com. That's ASIO Gear.com to start shopping. Osseo Gear. Prepare to be invisible.
All right, Don. Well, thanks to the folks at Osseo for supporting the podcast. We hope that you check out that sale before it ends on Tuesday. Let's dig into the world of trail cameras. I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the July 4th holiday and what you have planned, and build that into a conversation about how you think guys need to focus on saving a little bit of money on battery costs since they're outrageous this year.
Well, I've got a tradition of, every year I put my cameras out 4th of July weekend. I think when you put them out earlier than that, the bucks don't have enough antler growth to really tell one buck from another. A lot of times, or it's hard to, just get an idea of what a buck is going to have on his head that year. The cost of batteries is out of this world, and just going to go up and up with the liberal agenda and the electric cars and all that garbage. But the first way you could save money is actually by not putting your cameras out so early. Let them bucks get pretty much growed out, whether it be, the 1st of July like I do, or even wait till the 1st of August. So you can save money that way. Typically, I've only got a handful of cameras out right now. I plan to put a bunch more out in the next couple of days, and I would have done it yesterday and today, but the rain kind of kept me at bay. And I do a lot of this on my ATV, and being muddy, I don't want to go leaving muddy tracks so people can see where I've been. I like to be a little bit discreet. When you're in my position, the last thing you need is competition and people knowing that you're at a certain place, and boom, they're in either looking for your camera or putting their own out in the same area. So I need to let it dry up just a little bit, but I jumped in my truck after church today and went for a little ride to some of the places that I plant them, or I put them, to see if I could slip in there without leaving tracks. And there's about 3 properties that I'm going to go to tomorrow, and I'll be able to get in there without, leaving a bunch of sign behind that I was there. So I'll be doing that tomorrow. But, the cost of batteries is just out of this world. I spent the entire afternoon when I got back from that ride loading up my cameras with fresh batteries and putting the cards in and making sure they're ready to go to the field. And I'd hate to guess how many dollars worth of batteries I stuck in cameras just this afternoon. It's in the hundreds for sure. There's the solar thing, I think has some merit. The thing about it is, though, is I don't think that that's a good option in a lot of cases. A guy on public ground, he doesn't want to leave a big solar panel out there, or even if he's sharing private ground with other hunters, he may not want a big solar panel. And then also that solar panel, it needs the sun to hit it. A lot of times that's kind of tough to get that solar panel mounted and the camera exactly where you want it. So there's kind of a challenge there. I've got 2 places on my farm where I use the solar panels, and that's it. But that is an option to help save on some batteries. The other thing is, I think I've been to a lot of properties actually, consulting, where I see guys that they'll have twice as many cameras as they really need. And if you've got a general rule of thumb, I think, is 1 camera per 40 acres. You should be able to get a picture of every deer on 40 acres with 1 camera. You got a 400-acre farm, that gives you 10 cameras. 10 cameras, you ought to be able to get every deer on 400 acres. And I see guys out there, they'll have 40 acres and they'll have 10 cameras. So, I think sometimes we overdo it with the cameras, and the process of doing that, we're putting way too much human intrusion onto a property with all those cameras. So, not put your cameras out so early. Use solar when you can. Maybe not have so many cameras. I think those are 3 good ways to save on battery cost.
Well, let's unpack that a little bit, because Wes and I were actually talking about this in the truck the other day, and I'm laughing at you saying that, because Wes and I hung 2 cameras literally maybe 15 feet from each other in a certain application, facing different ways. But we spend so much time talking about creating a spot for our stands or our blinds. We don't talk a lot about building a site for a trail camera. And your home farm is a perfect example about this. Is you've, over the years, basically developed ways, even in a non-bait state or non-mineral state, to where a deer might walk by it. It might be at dark. It might not be during daylight, but they're always going to travel through a certain area where you're going to be able to get your inventory a little bit. So how much of it, especially right now, or maybe some things that we can talk about building a camera site the same way as we would build a stand site?
Well, it's basically forcing the deer to travel through a restricted area instead of through a broad area where they've got multiple trails, say from cover to food, using whatever means, piled down trees or fences or whatever, to force them deer to have fewer travel options from point A to point B. That means you need fewer cameras. I got places on my farm that, they maybe don't set up well for a tree stand, but they set up well for a camera. And the reason they don't set up well for a stand is access. The access is not real good, but you put a camera in there and let it soak all season, you're never in there really. You
Right.
put a good one up this time of the year with a 32 gig card in it, and you walk away and come back in February or March and pull that camera, and there's little or no human intrusion during the season. But we build camera sites just the same as we do stand sites.
I remember you and I were over in Eastern Illinois years ago with some friends of ours that had leased a property, and they were trying to figure out where to put stands. And I remember there was this bean field with a thicket that came out, and it had an old high tensile fence that there was no livestock on the property anymore. And there was this place that you could access to put a stand and a trail camera. And I remember you reached over, and of course the fence was not tight anymore. It was really loose. And I don't know if you had a pair of pliers or how you might have even done it by hand. It was so old, but you took the old metal T-post clip off of the fence post and pushed that high tensile fence down to just where it was only about a foot in the air. So the third and second run, and you took that T-post clip and just made a low point in the fence. And sure enough, every deer that came out of that thicket, instead of jumping in random places or going out to the edge, they use that low spot in that old fence to cross. Perfect opportunity to run a trail camera on that. And eventually, sooner or later, you're going to get pictures of every deer on the property.
Right. And that's the key. I mean, concentrate that deer movement that's scattered and random. If you can concentrate that in a smaller spot, well, right there's where you put your trail camera.
Sure.
The rope scrapes we talk about a lot. Another perfect spot for trail cameras. Just put it on that rope scrape.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that too, because we do get some feedback of some guys that say the deer don't touch it. Every time that you or I know have put a rope out that we call them seasoned or weathered, meaning they've been out because you and I will cut ropes this time of year and leave them set out for next year to put out. I know there's still a lot of guys that even, the baking soda water people talk about, but the rope scrape method is getting very, very popular. There's even companies trying to sell them. They have to be in a spot that a deer's going to want to rub at. And Wes and I found a tree on one of the properties that had been logged that we were on this week. And I posted it this couple of days ago, maybe even yesterday. And it's where they logged it. It basically bent that tree over and made a big hoop. And there's a scrape about, I don't know, 25, 30 feet from it. But I just wanted to see, is that going to, just the rope itself going to pull it over? And that's why I meant by time will tell. But I think people think all the time that I can just hang a rope arbitrarily anywhere that I want and a deer's going to rub on it, or I can take a rope that I just bought from Amazon this time of year and hang it out and a deer's going to use it immediately. And it's just not the case.
I've seen many, many attempts at rope scrapes over the years, and some of them are almost head scratching comical. It's like, you got to put them where deer are going to be, where they would naturally want to scrape anyway. You've got to do it well ahead of season. Right now it's too late. Forget about going out and doing it now, guys. Save your time. Don't waste your time. Get your rope now. Hang it out in a tree in your yard and let it weather. And then right after season next year, go out and put it out. But, the crazy thing is you give people, I put out a video. If you go to the Whitetail Master Academy, there's a bunch of free videos on that Whitetail Master Academy. And one of them is on making a rope scrape. And you lay it out step by step by step, all the details, and people watch it and they still won't follow the directions. Then they want to know what they did wrong. Well, did you do this? Nope. I just bought my rope last week and took it out there, but I did soak it in a bucket of baking soda for 3 days. Well, that ain't going to cut it. Yeah.
So rope scrapes, think about it this way, folks, as you're out there. And that's what I wanted Don to kind of pick apart, though, a little bit. We're talking about a lot of battery costs going way up, and everybody is so quick. I made a silly comment about selling a kidney, and I had 60 people telling me how to run external batteries, solar, whatever. And I didn't even ask for what are you doing about it. I just said I was selling a kidney. And nobody commented that they wanted to buy a kidney, which is odd. I figured I would have had a bunch of people take me up on it, but nobody is really strategizing is how can I get by with less cameras and the other benefits that come with less cameras on a piece of property. And that's the lack of intrusion that we're going to put on that property by building a trail camera location, just like a stand location. And, access to get in and change that card is just as important as going in and hunting that property or doing habitat work at the wrong time of year. You're still going in and putting intrusion on it, pulling that card.
And we also got to recognize that every person's situation is different. We could spin this to food plots. One guy is going to have a single 1/4 acre food plot, and that's all he's going to have. A guy like me might have 6 or 8 food plots, each one of them measuring acres in size. So, and one guy may have 1 or 2 trail cameras, another guy may have 100.
Right.
Most of us are going to be somewhere in between. But if you're a guy that doesn't have the financial means to have as many as you want and to buy the batteries. We're just trying to help those guys to be as efficient as possible with the resources that they do have.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it goes back to if you got unlimited funds, which not all of us, I don't know of many of us that do have unlimited funds, but there's a plan and a way to figure out the best avenue for it. And part of that might be cut back on the number. Cameras are addictive. That's the problem. I mean, we talk about it on the podcast. We look forward to this part of the year more than anywhere else, and you want to get every picture. And as cheap as cell cameras are now, getting them sent to your phone, it's just fun to sit there and look at them. I shouldn't say this, but I got a buddy of mine. He's a really close friend. He actually listens to the podcast, and when we go back to work, he's going to come down to my office and say, "Why are you talking about me?" But one of the best guys I know, and unfortunately, he was married and lost his wife to cancer several years ago. So he's back on the dating scene, and I guess he signed up for one of these online dating things where you meet people. And he said, "Terry, this online dating thing," he said, "I feel so bad. It's like I'm looking at trail camera pictures." He goes, he swipes left. He goes, "Nope, that one's a cull buck." He swipes.
Well, I'm glad I'm not doing that.
But that was off on the weird direction, but just popped in my head. But I think overall, just the trail camera thing is just so addictive. It gets us in trouble a lot because, we try to get in there too much. We try to get too much intel thinking that we're doing the good thing, but the pressure and the cost, that money could possibly be used somewhere else that we need it. So just a different spin on the, hundreds of people that want to throw quick advice to people about what they should do with battery costs being so up is maybe cut back on your batteries. And if you free up a little bit of money, it might let you run fewer, better quality cameras too. That's another point that you brought up on the phone the other day. Yeah,
right. If you can't afford the batteries, except enough batteries for one or two cameras, get the best one or two cameras out there. A good camera is going to be way more efficient with those batteries and save you money there. And, I'll take it even another direction, Terry. I'm getting my cameras out there to hopefully get pictures of Babe here real quick, my target buck. And, we had the contest on the Whitetail Master Academy people, which ended July 1st. That it's been a 3-stage contest, but members had until July 1st to guess what Babe will score this fall if I kill him. And that's a big if. I'm not saying I'm going to. It's a big if. But if I kill him, they had to guess the score. And I showed pictures of the buck from last year. I made it very clear on social media and some videos and everything else what he scored. 185 to 187, somewhere right in there. And then people had to guess what he's going to be this year. Well, the contest ended yesterday, and I went through all the entries, and because I thought it was going to be interesting how many people guessed over 200 inches and how many people guessed under 200 inches. And for those who might be listening and don't know, Babe was 5 last year. He's going to be 6 this year. But 52% of the guesses were over 200 inches and 48% were under. I thought it was pretty interesting that it was almost even, that split. The highest guess that anybody submitted was 222 and 2/8, and the lowest was 187 and 4/8. And to be honest, he was probably 187 and 4/8 last year. So, and I don't think that's a bad guess. But anyway, I made mention that on the podcast, I was going to throw out what I think he'll score this year. And I'm going to go with under 200 inches. I just think he's basically a clean 5x5. He's got really good beams, but his G2s are pretty short compared to his other tines. G2s are typically, some of the longest tines a buck has. He does have some extra stickers, but the stickers weren't long. Those stickers are probably going to be the key to whether he makes it over 200 or not. But I'm just going to throw out a guess of mid 190s. Let's say 195 and 5/8, and we'll see what happens. I have not seen a picture of Babe yet. I've not laid eyes on Babe this summer, so I may be shocked. I may get the first picture and he's an absolute giant that's obviously going to be over 200, or he may be disappointed, not even look as good as last year. So we'll see. But I told people I was going to throw out a guess on the podcast, so that's mine: 195 and 5/8.
Well, getting to see deer like Smokey and Mel in person live on the hoof at different points of their life, I can tell most listeners don't get a chance to see deer with that big a frame, and I was on a big deer 190 class last year, but didn't have that huge of a frame. These deer that we're talking about, they just have a huge frame to them, similar to Smokey and Mel. And the thing it comes down to is mass makes up a lot of inches on a frame that big, but non-typical antler stickers, the more this guy puts on, it's they get 5, 6, 7 non-typical points on them. You can get 10, 11, 12 inches of score really quick. So I agree with you. I think it's going to come down to what those stickers develop into this year, and how many inches of that non-typical stuff is going to be on him. But a lot of similarities with his rack, though. Short G2s are kind of a thing on your farm.
Well, there's that line for sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's related to a buck I shot in 2019. 6-year-old buck that I shot that year had short G2s his entire life. Really nice G3s though, and that's exactly what this buck Babe's got, is short G2s but really good G3s. And
we all know, I mean, this deer could cap at 5, he could cap at 7, we don't know. So pretty cool story to follow along on the Whitetail Master Academy if you want to dig into that. We're going to move on to our listener submitted questions, but before we do, we've been asked by our friends and partners at Quiet Cat to show a little bit different video this week. And this is a new piece of firmware that's coming out for those people who own Quiet Cats. And, if you have questions about this, Don or I are not the experts when it comes to anything tech savvy. But basically, your controller inside of your Quiet Cat is going to be able to be programmed and tweaked based on the needs that you want. And this video that's coming up that we're going to play has a lot of references to being compliant with public land, especially out west. So I think you can have a higher wattage bike, but tune it down to be compliant. But the benefit that I see in this and what I know is that users in flat Midwestern areas like where Don lives can tune these bikes to be more efficient with battery power than, say, my cousin who has a Quiet Cat in the hills of West Virginia or the mountains of West Virginia. So I see us being able to basically tune a Quiet Cat electric bike based on the need of terrain. And I think a lot of users are going to get a lot of benefit out of this. And this firmware is coming. They want us to start talking about it. So we obviously said we'd be happy to share this video on the podcast. So for those watching on YouTube, you're going to get to see it. But otherwise, the people listening on the podcast platforms, give this a listen.
One bike to rule them all. Quiet Cat Electric Bikes presents variable power output firmware, the game-changing technology that empowers riders like never before. With VPO, you hold the power to customize your e-bike's output parameters, break barriers, and ride in full compliance with regulations. Unlock a world of possibilities with VPO. Experience the trails, paths, and restricted areas that were once off limits. Travel the distance, push the limits, and rest easy knowing you are compliant with regulations. Easily switch classifications and unleash the full potential of your journey. You now have the power when you want it and legal compliance when you need it. It's as simple as a few taps on your e-bike's display control pad. Select the desired mode, Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and unrestricted, ensuring you ride in the right class for the terrain. One bike to rule them all. Unleash the power with Quiet Cat.
This one comes from Rob Eschman from Sterling Heights, Michigan. He says, "Hi, Don and Terry. I have a question regarding planting soybeans in early July. I know it's past the prime time to plant beans this late in the season, but with the extreme drought conditions in my area, I thought it may be worth a try to attempt to grow some forage for the deer in the summer, or should I wait until late summer and plant some cereal grains instead? Thanks for all your advice and for sharing your faith in Christ. Rob Eshman. Rob, I think right now it depends on the moisture situation in your area. If you're still experiencing the drought, I would personally wait and forget about planting the soybean crop now. If you've got moisture, you can get out there and do it. Absolutely. And those beans will be up in probably 3 or 4 days and be off. And if you continue to get timely rains, you'll have a decent crop of soybeans this fall. If you do have soybeans and you do have a drought and you're not going to plant them, that makes a great fall plot too. Now, not just soybeans by themselves, but what I like to do when I plant my fall plots is, I'll put maybe, I'd say 10 to 20% by weight of the seed in soybeans. And the frost is going to kill those soybeans, the first frost. But when those soybeans first pop out of the ground and they're in that 2-leaf stage, the deer just absolutely love them. And it doesn't matter if it's in the spring or in the fall. And that is a really good way to get the deer started hitting your fall plots, is to put some soybeans in there, get them hammering them soybeans, and they'll find whatever your plot is, whether it be oats, deadly dozen, brassicas, whatever. Those soybeans will be some of the first things they clean out of that plot.
Yep. Especially in states like Kentucky, throwing some soybeans in for September, those fresh germinated soybeans. The danger in planting, you can plant a low group number soybean right now. I mean, farmers are double cropping and planting it behind their wheat harvest as we're talking right now. But the difficulty or the challenge with that is moisture. And, if they're no-tilling in on wheat fields that have been sprayed, they're not disrupting and not losing the moisture in that ground. If you're talking about planting and working ground right now, it could turn really dry through July and August and be just a total failure if you're not careful. So just take that into consideration. And then, Dwayne's talked about it a little bit there at Real World. You might try to shift your northern blend line down a little bit more the later you plant, just to get a little bit lower group number bean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other thing is soybeans is the one seed that is probably one of the most volatile. In other words, it can lose germination worse than most other seeds. Clovers, brassicas, even corn will pretty much hold its germination from year to year. It'll lose a little bit, but very little, as long as it's stored right. Soybeans, even if they're stored right, can lose significant germ. So if you've got soybeans on hand, go ahead and plant them in the fall, get rid of them. Then you can start with fresh soybeans the following year.
We're actually going to be sending some information to our dealers that if they have beans left over this year, to talk to their customers about, blending out some of those soybeans into fall plots. It's just a great early season attraction. So I know we have a lot of Real World dealers that listen to this podcast, for tips and advice. That's another thing we can do when we have soybeans left over this year, is blend those off. Every customer that comes in that you want to put a fall plot in, put a little bit of soybean down with them. It's a great attractant to use for early season.
Yep.
All right. I hope the font on this one is not too small. This was a really long question, so I hope you're going to be able to see it. It's pretty tiny.
This one comes from Grant Flippin from Jefferson City, Missouri. He says, Don and Terry, I have listened to every episode of Chasing Giants and have thoroughly enjoyed each one. A handful of times during the podcast, I've heard you mention states like Kansas, Iowa, Illinois, and sorry, Terry, but Kentucky, among some others, as hot spots for big bucks. As a lifelong deer hunting resident of Missouri, I can't help but notice that the states mentioned border the show me state, but Missouri hasn't been mentioned. Could it be because of all the things the Missouri Department of Conservation is getting wrong? A 10-day rifle season in the heart of the rut, 2 separate youth seasons, one of which is always either the last weekend in October or the first weekend in November. Multiple bucks to be killed by each hunter, cheap over-the-counter non-resident tags, and crossbows being legal for everyone to use for the entirety of archery season are some of the reasons I feel that we are lacking. I know that you have numerous consulting clients in this state, and I'd be willing to bet that each one of them has mentioned to you at least some of the things I listed. It's no secret that with the amount of cover we have, along with our mostly fertile soils, Missouri could be a top whitetail state, but are being hobbled by the MDC itself in what appears to be just another State Department grabbing for money. Both of your all's opinions on this would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for being honorable men in an industry that is out to deceive. Well, Grant, first of all, thanks for your compliment. We just try to tell the truth, and sometimes the truth is uncomfortable for some of the folks that might hear it. But you hit the nail on the head with all the reasons you listed. I've always thought myself, you got Missouri sitting there with Kansas on one side, Illinois on the other, and Iowa right above them. 3 of the top states in the nation for big whitetails, and Missouri sits right there in the middle of them, and is an absolute disaster. And it's from poor management. There's no other excuse. Poor management. It starts with that rifle season in the heart of the rut. And I'm not familiar with how long Missouri's rifle season is. I know that it's longer than the 3-day season Illinois has in the rut, but gun season. It starts there, and then when you're allowed to kill multiple bucks, you're allowed to use crossbows during the entire archery season. All those things add up, and each one compounds itself. And the sad thing that I see with these state agencies is they are so political that it is almost impossible to change anything. It literally will take money. It's going to take an organized effort with lobbyists and legislators on your side driving this thing, pushing it through. That's the only way it's ever going to change. And to be honest, I hold out very little, if any, hope whatsoever that my home state of Illinois will ever do anything positive for the management of the deer herd. And you've got it even worse in Missouri. As bad as we've got it, and what frustrates me is Illinois once had the best deer herd, and poor politics ruined it. So I got to see it at its best, and then I got to see it fall apart. I think Missouri has always been a step or two behind Illinois, and they just continue. And another bad thing is it wouldn't take that long to turn things around if the right game manager or deer biologist was allowed to come in and manage without any political influence, just do what he wanted. He could turn that state around in 4 years, and you guys could be shooting bucks as big as Iowa, as big as Kansas, as big as Illinois. I mean, you've got it. You're right there you're right in the heart of it. So I feel for you, but you hit the nail on the head. You had the reasons listed of what the problem is.
Yeah, I think it puts it in even a worse situation. Kentucky has the rifle season during the rut, crossbow friendly for most of archery, but it's only 1 buck, and you start adding hunters and double the buck harvest. I mean, I know everybody doesn't shoot 2 bucks, but it's just really, really hard. It's Kentucky's biggest liability for age structure management, in my opinion. The baiting thing is an issue, but states like Ohio still are somewhat better off than we are, even with baiting. But it's that firearm season, so then you double the harvest. Just a lot of 2- and 3-year-olds get shot every year.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for the question.
Okay, the next one comes from Joseph Miller from Hopkinton, Iowa. He says, "Dear Don and Terry, thank you for the good word and podcast. My question is, why do my horses love Maximizer Plus Deer Mineral? I put hay and deer feed in my pasture last year for the deer, and now my horse keeps digging it up and eating it there just like a deer would. Have you heard of horses doing this before, and can you feed it to horses? Hope you two have a great deer season. God bless, Joseph Miller. Well, Joseph, I actually feed Maximizer Plus Deer Mineral to my cows. It's formulated for deer. You know, in the livestock industry, the better mineral products, there will be different formulations for each species. So, you know, there'll be like a goat mineral, and there'll be a cattle mineral, and there'll be a dairy cattle mineral, and a beef cow mineral, and there'll be different minerals for different stages of pregnancy in a cow. You know, there'll be later trimester minerals. There's one called Concept Aid that's designed to be fed during the cattle breeding season when you got the bull out with the cows to increase conception. And with that said, there's basically the same minerals and micronutrients in most of these. It's just that there will be different rates or different ratios of some of these based on the species. You know, with that said, you know, there's going to be species like sheep that you can't feed copper to, or copper would be toxic to sheep. So obviously there would not be copper in sheep mineral. But yeah, I've seen lots of different livestock feed on that Maximizer Plus. It's got the Expect Healthy Deer technology in it, and the deer crave it. And you know, one thing my grandfather taught me many years ago, he always had livestock, you know, and I was interested in livestock, and he told me, if you ever see your cows, you know, eating the wood on the barn or eating the bark off the trees, they're craving a mineral of some sort. There's something they're deficient in. Get them a good mineral and they'll stop that almost immediately. And I remember after my grandpa passed and I had the captive deer, there was one spring where those captive deer were eating the bark off the trees in the pen. And as soon as I noticed that, I got some mineral and I started putting mineral in their feed, and they stopped. And so any of you guys that have livestock, you see that, you know what it is. It's a mineral deficiency. Go get a good mineral. And you know, something I want to share is, you know, while we're talking about mineral, I got a call this week from a friend of mine, Sam Calora from Iowa. And if that name sounds familiar, he owns the Mrs. Dopey scent company out there. He's got captive deer and elk, and he's got a sporting goods store out that way, and super good deer hunter. And he's been on the cover of North American Whitetail, I think 3 times, and he's getting ready to be on for the 4th time, because last fall he killed his 4th 200-inch buck, and he also killed 2 other giants. I think one was in the 180s and one in the high 170s. So he killed 3 bucks last year in Iowa that were all giants. And he called to tell me that he wanted me to know that all 3 of those bucks had been eating Maximizer mineral for several years before he shot them. But that's just a testament to, you know, Sam is not a paid sponsor. There's a lot of celebrities that are being paid to spew out talking points about various nutrition products. And in recent weeks, I've seen them on social media where these guys are, you know, they're running their hand through a feed, or, you know, they've got a mineral bag in their hand and they're telling you how all these guys are doing. They're paid to do that. And they've got a list of talking points they've got to hit to make their sponsor happy. And some of those guys are even saying statements that Terry and I know 100% for a fact are absolutely not true. They're claiming that, oh, I've been using this product for X number of years, and we absolutely know for certain they weren't, because they had a different sponsor, you know, during that period of time. To have an endorsement like Sam called, you know, was just fantastic. But to get back to your question, yeah, it won't hurt your horses whatsoever. Like I said, I feed it to my cows.
Well, you need to tell Sam that I will give him some free mineral if he lets us use some trail camera pictures of those bucks in the mineral. How about that? You should have turned that conversation around. I trade out some stuff for him on there.
he is a real world dealer too.
He is, yeah.
So, yeah.
Those people who don't know, they've probably ran into Sam at the Iowa Deer Classic, because he's had a booth there before, hasn't he? Isn't he always out there? Yeah, I think he's always out there at that
show.
Yep.
You know, if I had to say who the best deer hunters that I ever met are, the two that really come to mind to me would be Bobby Worthington and Sam Calora from Iowa. That guy, I mean, and both them guys are as humble and down to earth as they could possibly be, but they're just their minds are so full of whitetail knowledge, but they're so humble you almost have to pull it out of them. You know, they're not just going to come up to you and tell you all they know. You're going to have to pull it out bit by bit with questions.
Yeah. Well, if you want everything that people know, you just post a comment on social media about selling a kidney for batteries. You'll get every answer that you didn't ask for and more. So
social media, I mean, I don't even know why the world has problems anymore. The answers are out there on social media. We could solve everything.
You got it.
All right, our next question comes from Justin Garber from Lebanon, Missouri. He says, Don and Terry, this question is for both of you. How do you get a deer to cross a creek where you want them to? This is on a neighbor's place where we can't utilize felling trees or bank removal and landscaping, etc. About half of one side has 6-foot eroded banks due to MDC's Great Stream Habitat push. Thanks for all the valuable info and time you spend on the podcast. Well, Justin, there's a reason that I picked this question. Is I get a lot of questions that are posed to me from people that want to accomplish something in terms of deer management, land management, whatever, but then they want to tie my hands. Well, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do this. Well, I don't know how you're going to get a deer to cross that creek other than you've got to make one spot on that creek way more easy for him to cross than other spots. And how you make it easier or make other areas harder, there's a lot of ways to do that. You're not allowed to cut down trees. That's one way you could do it. You're not allowed to cut back the creek bank. That's another way to do it. You could put a culvert in and create a land bridge. I'm guessing you're probably not allowed to do that. So there's 3 ways I just named that you can't do any of those. So at some point we run out of options. It's not like that we can magically come up with a new idea to do something like that. You're kind of limited. So I'm just going to be very basic in my answer, and you've got to make it as easy as possible for those deer to cross at one spot. How you do that, I don't know. And then you got to make it the other spots on that creek where they're already wanting to cross now, you got to make those spots more difficult for them to cross. And they will take the easy path as long as they're not pressured too much at that spot. But how you go about it, you've tied my hands too much for me to give you the specifics. You're going to have to come up with the specifics.
Yeah. And maybe the solution isn't trying to manipulate it, but find the spot that's easier, and maybe changing the access to put a stand in that location instead of changing the creek bank. Maybe you find the spot that is already easiest for them to cross. Yeah, getting back to basic woodsmanship, I think, is what we're missing sometime. I'm not saying that this guy doesn't know how to hunt or anything. I don't want to imply that, but sometimes we look for an easy answer, easy gimmick that we hear on a podcast or something and say, I need to do that, and it's not possible. Instead of stepping back and saying, well, let's rethink this and change my access, or, a different theory on using what is there. We run into that a lot in Illinois with these waterways and levees, especially down by the river bottoms, because where they'd build these levee systems beside the river, I mean, you could have a 10-foot just straight cliff, where the waterways come in, where they're protecting these fields. So it's difficult in some places.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Good question, though. Sometimes they just don't have an answer.
Right. Next one comes from Kurt Myers from Washington, Pennsylvania. He says, I learn a lot from your podcast. I appreciate the faith-based lean to it. My question is related to the drought conditions this year. Do you think it will have an impact, good or bad, on antler size this year? Well, Kurt, that's going to depend on how bad the drought is. Somebody posed a question to me this week. Would I rather it be really wet or really dry for antler growth? And the truth of the matter is, I would want it close to normal, close to average summer, as far as average rainfall, average temperatures. If I had to lean one way or another, I would say a little bit wetter than average and a little bit warmer than average. Those warm temperatures promote blood flow, and those velvet antlers are basically just full of blood vessels carrying nutrients to that growing antler. So, warmer temperatures will increase the blood flow to those antlers. A little bit more moisture will promote plant growth and that new growth on the end of the plant. So the most nutrient dense part of the plant, that's the part that the deer wants to eat. So if you see deer out browsing in soybeans, he's not eating those giant leaves down at the bottom of the plant. He's eating that new tender growth at the top of the plant. And it's the same way with all plants. And we just got the big rain here, and what happened? It stimulated those plants to put on some fresh growth. And if I had my choice, it would be just a little bit wetter than normal, just a little bit warmer than normal, but not too much. You get too hot, it's too stressful. You get too much water, it's too stressful. So I think that is the optimal conditions for growing antlers. As far as do I think it will affect the growth this year, the drought? Well, the drought's over in my area, but I can tell you for certain that a drought can absolutely affect antler growth. I think any biologist would agree with that. On the Whitetail Master Academy, we had a long conversation with Lee Mitchell, who shared some facts and figures from the 2012 drought. Lee's a biologist that manages a project for the Army Corps of Engineers, and he shared some of that data in that video. But absolutely, without a doubt, his study showed that the drought of 2012 had a significant impact on not only antler growth, but the buck's body weights that fall when compared with bucks of the same age in other years.
I think there's so many variables to it because, not only, the stress that a deer has over the winter, say you have a brutal winter and then you come in straight into a drought, that's probably the worst because the deer is already stressed, malnourished, coming through the winter. And then, I think about areas like Minnesota. Minnesota had that just brutal winter up there for extended periods of time with snow covering the ground and everything, and then went straight into a drought. That seems to me like that would be even a bigger problem because you got a lot of stress on top of a lot of stress. Whereas, we might be dry here in Kentucky, but we had a very mild winter except for that really cold snap right at Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. It wasn't even really below freezing that much after that. So I could just see so many variables that either get stacked or different combinations going through the year playing a big part in this.
Mm-hmm. Well, in Texas, the most stressful time of the season or the year in Texas is the summer. It's not the winter right, like it is up north. And Lee talked about that. He manages a huge ranch in southern Texas, as well as that Army Corps of Engineer project here in the Midwest. And it is very interesting, the things that he had to share. And I think Dr. Strickland talked about it too on some of our conversations with him about how in Texas it's that summer dry period that's the most stressful period of the year on the deer.
Yep. All right. Well, great questions. Thanks, everybody. Don, why don't you remind all of our Amish Mennonite folks that listen to the podcast on MTech or the other call-in shows, if they want to participate in submitting questions for the show, why don't you remind everybody what they need to do besides going to chasinggiants.com and submitting your question?
Yeah, you can go to chasinggiants.com. There's a form to fill out there, or you can mail in your questions. If you want to mail those in, mail them to Real World Wildlife Products. The address would be P.O. Box 55 in Arthur, Illinois. And the zip code is 61911. And I think there was a couple of these questions that were submitted, by people mailing them in this week. So we get several of those and we use them.
Yep. Just make sure that you understand Miss Janice in the office is opening that envelope and going to see what your question is. So make sure you know that.
Janice has got a couple of good laughs at some of these letters that come in when they start talking about Code Brown and the King Buck.
Yeah.
She gets a kick out of it. But something else I'll mention, Terry, the new T-shirts came in. We send a free T-shirt out, with every question that we use. And the new T-shirts came in. They have the Osseo, they have the Chasing Giants logo in Osseo camo.
Yeah,
so
I think they look pretty cool, don't they?
Yeah, we shipped out a pile of them this week because we'd gotten behind. We was out of some of the others shirts and was waiting on those to come in. So a pile of those went out this week.
And we just are approving the new 2024 Real World shirts that I think are going to be pretty cool looking. A big different spin on it. All you bow hunters are going to absolutely love some of these designs. Looking forward to getting that kind of stuff out. But the next couple days, Don, you say it's going to be dry enough you can hang some cameras in the morning?
Yeah, I've got at least 3 properties that I can get on without leaving muddy tracks from my ATV. Go in on grass waterways or whatever and do
I can tell you, speaking from experience of this last week, if you take your Quiet Cat out and it's wet, make sure you put your rear fender on that's in the box. Because right now, when I put your Quiet Cat together, I didn't put the rear fender on it. You will have a dark streak up the back side of your rear end all the way to your neck, where it looks like you had one of them little baby diaper blowouts, where it just squirts all the way up, because it will sling it all over you. So speaking from experience of the last couple of days on a Quiet Cat, make sure your rear fender's on there if it's wet. I got 2 days off work that we're off tomorrow and Tuesday. I'm going to finally get the oil changed in my tractor. I haven't done that. Put together a 360 hunting blind, have it ready to rock, and do a little bush hogging. So I got a fun-filled couple days here to piddle.
Yeah, me too. Just putting out cameras. I got a little bit of mowing to do. My clover fire breaks. I sprayed the grass with clethodim here probably 2.5 weeks ago. It's all turned yellow and brown, so now I can go in and I can mow what's left and get that. And this rain that clover will explode with this rain. So get that done, and hopefully one of these cell cameras will send me a picture of Babe real quick, so I can quit wondering how big he's going to be.
I can't wait. So thanks again, everybody, for the support. Again, thanks for your patience as we released a little bit later tonight, and we'll be back next week. We're going to have an interesting segment next week, and that's talking about doing work on your properties. And I'm looking forward to hearing Don talk a little bit about some projects that he's done on his home farm, including the new addition. And I think it's going to be an analogy and a story that everybody can relate to. So looking forward to that.
Yep. So hope you guys all have a great 4th. Don't forget, give the Lord thanks for growing up or living in one of the greatest nation, without a doubt, in the history of this planet. So we're all absolutely blessed to be able to do what we do, and just hope you guys get a chance to spend some time with family and enjoy your time away from work. And see you back here next week. God bless.
Thanks, everybody.
Chasing Giants has been brought to you by Osseo Camo, Via Farm Real Estate Company, 360 Hunting Blinds, Victory Chevrolet, Real World Wildlife Products, Matthews Archery, Novix Tree Stands, Gingerich Tree Farm, WildlifeFarming.com, Quiet Cat, and Vortex Optics. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week. for another episode of Chasing Giants.